Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. And I know this is going to be a very intriguing conversation because we are going to be talking about how to think like Sherlock Holmes to find out what your customers really want. So that definitely intrigues me. I'm a big fan of Sherlock Holmes. I'm sure people have read books or have watched movies, and I think he's kind of a quirky character. So I'm really excited about this. So, Kay, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here.
I'm happy that you're here. And before we get into how to think like Sherlock Holmes, will you please share with the listeners who you are and what you do?
Yes, I am the author of the new book, Uncopyable Sales Secrets, what is the title? Oh my gosh, it's a tongue twister. How to create an unfair advantage and outsell your competition. So this book came out last May, so less than a year ago, and it's based on my years in outside sales and all kinds of different sales. My husband and I have a company together, and I've worked with him for years selling his speaking and his consulting and just selling him. I say I'm his pimp. So and I've even done a little bit of network marketing, so all kinds of sales. And I wrote this book based on this uncopyable philosophy that my husband and I have developed over the years of being different and unique. And the brass ring is, of course, to be uncopyable, so unique and different that you're uncopyable. So that is my book. I now speak and consult to help others be more successful in sales. But yes, I do have, especially one of the reasons I got the book deal is that I started after college in outside sales in a male dominated industry. I was the first woman ever hired, and the first company I worked with was a hardware company, builders hardware for cabinetry. So I was calling on hardware stores and lumber yards and builders. And I was very successful. From there, I went to work for an equally glamorous company. I was selling automotive exhaust products, so mufflers and catalytic converters. And that I wasn't the only woman in that position, but I was one of just a few. And I went on to be the #1 salesperson. So with that cred, that's part of why this book publisher was so interested in me, because I did compete in a really non-traditional industry and found a way to succeed. And that's what, I know you want me to share with your listeners. So I'm loving to have you along for the ride.
That's amazing. And I know you were talking about the industry, a male dominated industry, and you also earned the nickname Muffler Mama. So I want to know a little more about this. Like, where did that nickname come from?
The nickname came from a story when I was early in my career with Walker. That was the name of the company. I obviously had a bit of a credibility issue because I was selling through distributors, but they were ultimately selling to muffler shops. And so I thought, the guys were really, really good to me as customers and my team, but I did have to prove myself. So I got the idea to go to one of the muffler shops and ask them if they would show me how to install a muffler system. And that really got their attention because no other rep had done that. No other male or female rep had done that. And of course, that really wasn't an integral part of my job, but it ties into the Sherlock part because Sherlock is wanting to know more about the customer and how the customer uses the product, what their not just their use of the product, but what are their daily lives like and what are the challenges, what are the opportunities. So I did go and install this muffler. And I tell the story in the book, so I won't go into all the details, but it was pretty comical because, right away, the guy at the muffler shops looked at what I was wearing. He said, "Okay, that's not going to fly. You need to go get some steel toe boots." Like, okay. So, and he said, if otherwise you might lose a toe if you drop the muffler on your toe. So that was, like I said, the first part of this whole story where I actually did install a muffler. I never needed to use that skill again, but it gave me so much credibility. And that story got around and they nicknamed me Muffler Mama. And I think it was a really cordial nickname. And I love to laugh. So you can't take yourself that seriously. So I, at that time, I didn't really think it through like I do now in sales situations, but I think for you listening, it's a great example of how, the ultimate goal is to understand the customer and also let them know that you want to understand them and tell them that you want to understand them. Say, I want to know your business. I want to know more about you so that I can help you. So that is the Sherlock angle that I talk about in the book.
And I love how you reference too, it's not just about selling your customers something, but it's how they use it. And I think that's a big takeaway for our audience. So whatever you are selling, if it's a product or a service, it's not just about selling it, but how are they using it? And I love that because it just adds that personal element to really get to know your customers. And I love the title of the book. It has secrets in there. Like, it's just such a great title. Now, is this book for anyone who wants to make more sales in their business? It's not just for brick and mortar.
Right. It's definitely not. It really is the sales philosophy. My background is B2B, but it applies to anyone who wants to have a relationship. So it's not a one and done, maybe not a retail, sale, but that's not even true as I'm thinking about this, because even if you're selling cars or appliances or something, there is something in here for you. I do touch on, specific examples of online and brick and mortar, but the philosophy is the same. I'm thinking about one story I tell in the book where a woman named Leslie is selling IT services. So she is selling B2B, but she tells her customer, I will give you white glove service. And that customer later said, I didn't buy the company or even the product. I bought what this salesperson will do for me, that I won't have to worry about this. She's built trust. She's proven herself. And now I know that she's the one to take care of me. So it really doesn't matter. I mean, I know that you're more on the social side, but really, I mean, how many times lately have you been just pitched on LinkedIn without people knowing anything about you? So the philosophy of getting to know your prospect and really wanting to serve them, and again, letting them know that it applies to any type of sales situation, really.
I love that. But now here's the ultimate question. I really want you to tackle this whole meaning behind think like Sherlock Holmes.
You got it. You got it. I think one of the biggest mistakes that salespeople make, and I've seen it again and again, I've experienced it, we've all experienced it. Salespeople talk too much. And I can't say that I'm not guilty of that at times either. I am a talker. Podcasts are my jam because I get to talk, right? But in sales, you have to not only listen, but be tuned in for clues. One of the reasons I always choose a Zoom meeting over just a phone call is that I can look at your background, which I've already checked out. I can see some of your values, your family, your maybe your mantras. I'm learning about you based on your background. So I'm looking for clues. I can see that you're nodding and you've got you're thinking about what I'm saying. These are all clues. And, I'm not trying to sell you anything, but I am wanting to understand you and learn more about you. So Sherlock begins with listening, but it's a great reminder to really pay attention to all of the signals that someone is offering you, and use those to learn how to figure out, hey, here's how I can really help this customer.
I love that. And I think too, we do get into the talking too much. I know I have, but what I'm hearing is to let the customer or the potential customer client do the talking. And we need to do a better job of listening for sure.
I
And do
think,
you
yes,
think too,
exactly.
when we're trying to get the clients or the customers, instead of focusing so much on the product or the service, should we be focusing more on the transformation that the customer will get? Because I think we focus so much on our product because we're so close to it. We're so proud of it. And we just love all the little bits and pieces of it or all the benefits. But should we be, looking at it in a different way?
Oh, exactly. You totally nailed it. I have this funny story popped into my mind that one of our clients is selling machinery. And by really asking this owner of this job shop what his goals were, where do you see yourself in 5 years? How is this going to make your life easier? Well, it turns out he said, well, I want to retire and I want to, move to Florida and spend time on a boat. And this salesperson actually sold him eventually on this new equipment because it would make his business more valuable to sell. And he said, I'm going to help you buy a bigger boat. So, it has nothing to do, buying a bigger boat has nothing to do with the efficiency of this machine, but it's the transformation on how will this affect your business? Ultimately, how will this affect your life? And I totally agree that it's not really for the wrong reasons. I mean, we've all met bad salespeople who want to just shove something down your throat. But I think much more often it's just, like you said, we are in love with our product or service. We believe it. We drank the
Mhm.
Kool-Aid and we think everyone should have that. But really, this is just one piece of our prospect, our customer's life. And so the real key is to ask those questions, let them tell, open-ended question, tell, like I said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What will this mean if this doesn't happen? What will this mean if it does happen? Help me understand, your life, your business, and what's important to you, because it's definitely much more about the product. A lot of us are selling products that aren't exactly unique. I have a friend who left a distributor and went to another distributor. And once the non-compete clause was over, he took all his customers with him because the
Mm.
product isn't the only thing. It might not even be the most important thing, which is hard for us to accept. But as a salesperson, you are part of that package and you're going to help your customer, as you said, transform part of their lives or their business.
And we can even look at like some really big brands that we know. I'm thinking Nike, Starbucks. If you really think about it, do they talk about the shoes or the coffee? Rarely. They're focused on the customer's feelings and experiences. That is really what they do well. And I think we have to be thinking of that because we're talking about transformations. So if you're going to do like an email or a social media post or talk about something new that you're doing on LinkedIn, instead of being so descriptive of the product or the service, be more descriptive on what the customer is potentially going to feel and what they're going to experience after they have it.
And I love the Starbucks example because holding a cup of Starbucks and drinking that versus holding a cup of coffee from AM PM are two totally different experiences.
Mhm.
And honestly, we drink Starbucks at home, but I don't buy a drip Starbucks because it's too strong for me. Puts hair on your chest. But so the product is secondary really in this case. I mean, if you look at the Super Bowl and the Pepsi commercials, whatever that was, and definitely Nike, it's all about the brand and the identity and how your customer feels when they use your product or service, versus just we get too in the weeds with the stuff that really doesn't even matter to the customer.
Yes. And I think too, to add on to your think like Sherlock Holmes, I know I'm guilty of this. I'm sure a lot of people are, is we are thinking about like us, right? Like, I have to get this product or service out there. I have to make sales, where we have to take the focus off of us, right? And put it on them and make our customers, put them up on a pedestal, really.
Right. We have a saying, and I mentioned it in my books, my husband's written books, make your customers rock stars.
I like
Their
that.
world is so busy and full, and we're just one part of their day or their life. But if we can elevate them and give them shout outs in front of other people, or compliment them, or pay attention to details. Oh, I remember you said your son was, going to be playing in a baseball game. I mean, I've always said, if you can, we've got one daughter, if someone compliments my kid, hey, they've got me, right? So yeah, it's elevating them, and thinking really, again, like the Sherlock. I do have a story in the book. I talk about years ago, I went to a street fair here in Seattle, and I had a palm reader read my
Hmm.
palm. And I just was doing it because I'd never done it. I thought it would be so interesting. And it was such a great lesson that ties into the Sherlock story, because as she was looking at my palm, she was also looking up at my face and in my eyes to see my reaction. Right down. I remember the first thing she said, she's just trying to get the backstory. And she said, I see a sister. And she could tell by my look, my face, I don't have a sister. And she said, I mean, a brother. And then she's like, yes, I see a brother.
Interesting.
I'm like, wow, this woman, I don't know if she's a master at palm reading, but she's a master at, human psychology and studying people, and sales, it's about psychology. It's about, when you said, when we're listening, not being ready to say the next thing that's on our mind, but to ask them the next question about, to follow up on what they said. If you ever someone says something and you follow up with kind of a tell me more question, that's a great Sherlock question, because then they know you really heard them. So that is just a real gem. And, especially in this day of, we've just survived COVID, we're all online, there's so much disconnect, mental health is horrible, people are lonely. A real meaningful conversation with your prospect or customer might be really, important and a game changer for you.
And I love how you brought up, like, there's a lot out there, social media. Before we end our conversation, do you have any advice for someone to be able to stand out with their sales above all the other white noise that's out there?
Well, I talk about being uncopyable. We do, I do a lot of branding things, like I'm wearing orange right now. I don't know if people will be seeing this. The roses I got delivered today are covering this big picture of a moose, because we call our ideal target our moose. So, thinking of some things that will help people remember you. Like, I challenge, when I work with a consulting client, I say, what can someone say about you that they can't say about anyone else? Now, afterwards, you're going to say, oh, yeah, Kay Miller, she was the one who wore orange. She's the one who talked about the moose. She talked about rock stars. So, I feel like people are kind of afraid to go with something and just dig in, even if it's a color or a saying or a phrase. Because I would also say be authentic, but then everyone says that, be authentic, but I do feel like, my book starts out, the first line in my book was that my first sales call was a disaster. So I'm being real, because we've all had these failures and disasters. So, I think social media, which is also a problem for me personally, it can be a negative for me if I just go down that rabbit hole. So I think being authentic and real and admitting that you're not perfect is one, but also I challenge you to just pick that one thing that you can say, okay, I'm going big on this one particular thing, and stick with it.
And I think too, to follow up with that, we cannot be afraid to repel people. And I think that's something big, that people try to stay like safe is they are not afraid to repel people. But I'm past
Exactly.
that. I'm just like, this is who I am, and you don't like it, you're not for me. Like
Yes. Don't try to be for everybody because then you'll be for nobody, really. Yeah,
exactly.
you'll find your moose, your tribe who you resonate with and vice versa. Um, yes, that would be my advice for sure.
Awesome. Well, Kate, this was such an amazing conversation. I know it was quick, but it was packed with some great, juicy information. So, where can the audience learn from you more?
I'm on LinkedIn. My name is Kay Miller. My LinkedIn is Miller K, and my website is uncopiablesales.com. And you can buy my book on Amazon. I would love for you to do that. It's been called the most fun sales book you'll ever read. So it's got lots of stories, lots of realness. It's not a textbook. So those are the ways that you can reach me. Also, you can email me, k@uncopiablesales.com.
Awesome. I will make sure that all those links are in the show notes. And thanks again for being here. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.